So, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Handtraps and just Bystials once again in particular. So, yeah, Bystials right now, they just seem fairly cracked, I guess. So, if you're able to utilize them going first, that'd be the best, I guess. But assuming we are going second here, we have Magma, Worm, Serenir, Baldrake. The best of these three for going second, of course, would not include Serenir. So if we're playing them pretty much as hand traps and not so much as engine, we would be running Magnemite, Worm, and Baldrake. And right now, since Magnemite is limited, I guess the one we would increase after Magnemite, like, I guess that would be Worm, and then Baldrake because you can increase the amount of Baldrakes you're playing. But you can't really increase the Magnemites, and then you can also run, of course, copies of Lubellion, and this is more useful, more so for going first. But assuming we're going second, Lubellion does nothing, so kind of cuttable. But yeah, if we just use these guys as hand traps effectively, then they're actually pretty insane right now. So for example, if we're against Maliss, we have the ability to potentially stop an Appaloosa from dropping onto the field. So the line to make Appo, so that'd be Dormouse, Banishing, White Rabbit, or March Hare, whichever one's fine. And then we go Link 1. Well, it depends on exactly what we do, but we essentially go into the Link decoder, link off into either White Binder or Red Ransom. It kind of depends on what you're doing exactly, and they'll determine which one you go into, I guess. But yeah, for the most part, it'll be Red Ransom. And then when you go into Red Ransom, then you would bring back Link Decoder because this just meets the stat line for Decoder. And we can banish the Decoder with the Druisworm here. And also, of course, if we have Magnemite or Druisworm, both are genuinely fine. So the idea with if we have Magnemite, we can Magnemite, add Druisworm, and then in end phase, we can then banish the White Rabbit. But you might be thinking, oh, banishing Maliss monsters, that's not good because they'll special summon themselves, except that's hard once per turn. And White Rabbit, if it's in the graveyard, it probably would have been banished already, so we can just banish White Rabbit, and what this accomplishes is this will prevent the White Rabbit from being banishable by the White Binder. And, well, it depends on the exact game state, right? But this can prevent MTP07 from being set from the deck because the line without TB11 is you essentially set GWC06 with the White Rabbit. Then you reset this with White Binder. Then next turn, you'll 06 bring back White Binder, banishing White Rabbit to set the 07. And this can still technically work as well if you have Red Ransom in the graveyard. But of course, we can also just banish Red Ransom as well as the White Rabbit, assuming there's no like Appaloosa, but even if there is an Appaloosa, there's kind of some potential to do this still. And of course, Druisworm is also just a big guy, so with Druisworm you can run over any of the Maliss like monsters or crash, whatever. And then Druisworm will be able to send a special summon card. So very efficient overall into Maliss. And it's not like you immediately win or just completely dog on Maliss with the Bystial cards. But yeah, overall, fairly useful. And they can get a good amount of work done. There's also the idea of using Bystials against ryzeal, which same kind of deal where you're not like literally just beating them over the skull with your Bystials, but they're still able to do a lot of things. And of course, the ideal usage, I think, for Bystials in any list would be a list that can use, well, I guess your Bystials as engine as well. But for this, none of these guys are that important in the sense that, you know, this is a light, and then we have a bunch of what's the word I'm looking for? All these guys are lights and fires, not so much dark, but this means we can banish like X ryzeal. We can also banish Muriel Logic Aggregator, and yeah, that is still beneficial because it can prevent some potential cross draws, and also this enables Nibiru if we're playing it. In fact, with Bystials and Nibiru, you're actually enabling, surprisingly enough, you're enabling Nibiru with Bystials somewhat. So, for example, if we're playing against Maliss, because they can't make Apollosa at that point, they have to commit something else onto the board. So they have to commit additional Maliss names, right? And if they do commit an additional Maliss name, we can then go ahead and drop the rock on them, and there's probably no extension afterwards. So if we were, if we had, let's go with like Druis Worm plus Nibiru, we can banish the decoder, and then our opponent has to commit Maliss in the Underground or March Hare to special summon an additional Maliss name. Then we would be able to, before they go into Apollosa at this point, we could then go into Druis Worm by going like Nibiru effect. You know? So it would be just new chain Nibiru, I guess, if that makes sense. And there's also the idea of course, like baiting with Bystials to then resolve your big ol' rock, which is something you can do as well, which is good into Apollosa in particular. And then with the ryzeal cards, this will contest cross really hard, which is nice. And you can't like immediately detonate or pop the Druis Worm. So at minimum, we're looking at a few things. So first off, the effect of cross right here. When a monster effect activated by your opponent resolves, you can detach one material from a ryzeal XYZ monster you control, and if you do, negate that effect. It has to be specifically a ryzeal XYZ monster, and no other monsters will work for this purpose. So here's a play we can do. We'll go ahead and assume it happens to be a light ryzeal that is in the graveyard, okay? So that's what you're going to be targeting with the duo drive. So like an X ryzeal or something. We will banish the X ryzeal with the Druis Worm here, okay? So if you have a ryzeal cross, if you actually do negate this, your duo drive will go to 2 materials because you'll detach one and then attach one. So it's not super efficient here. And this will potentially prevent the draw from occurring because you don't have necessarily enough ryzeal cards in your graveyard. Depends on like the exact situation, but whatever. So from here now, if you activate duo drive effect, the amount of materials on your duo drive will go down to 0, assuming you have no other ryzeal. Well, does it have to be ryzeal? No, this allows you to detach from any monsters. Yeah, so we could do detach one from duo drive and then detach one from like Flame Banshee, for example, technically, but probably not going to come up, I don't think, necessarily. But yeah, if we then go ahead and Nibiru here, we're very available to actually nib, despite cross being up, because you'll be doing like node special or just special summon star, whatever, and you need to put 2 level 4 monsters on the field for detonator, and until you get detonator on the field, there's nothing you can do about a Nibiru in current game state after resolving the duo drive. So Nibiru by itself, it might not do these decks in, but if we are considering Nibiru plus 1 additional card, it becomes just insane, I guess. Even if you are allowed to perform the, I guess, well, resolve the search, it's not necessarily going to get anywhere either, from here, so surprisingly solid in my opinion. And of course, like, even without Nib, you're able to contest the detonator with the Druid's Worm. So if Druid's Worm is sent off the field for whatever reason, we can then target the detonator. And then that will have to force the cross out, which is still pretty huge. And when we were resolving the Druid's Worm to begin with, we're ideally also knocking down one of the destroys off of the detonator. With this effect here, does this target actually? No, it doesn't target, unfortunately. But yeah, that'll still knock off a potential negate depending on exactly what's in their deck, or no, not their deck, their graveyard. They only have one card to attach, then super efficient. You can banish Mirror Logic Aggregator as well, if that actually matters for the deck in particular, whatever you happen to be playing. So that can get the job done, I guess. And then we have the idea of course, like Baldrake plus Druid's Worm. So if we have Baldrake plus Druid's Worm, this will really cook Detonator as well. You'd still have the idea of plugin though, which is a little bit of a problem. And the good thing about that, I guess, is that this targets, so we can still just banish Detonator once again, and our opponent can get completely cooked. So one idea for this line, I'm thinking, would be like, we'll go maybe Druid's Worm, I guess, and then Baldrake sending the Detonator, perhaps? And then, well, actually, no, that doesn't quite work unless you're going first. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it is possible to banish Detonator being targeted by plugin as well. So if we have a lot of Bystials, that becomes pretty viable. And if we are playing a more full package, you do have the option of, specifically against Maliss, you have the Bestial Lubellion, which can grab you Branded Regained. So if we're on our opponent's turn, it'll always be our opponent having Prio, so it'll be Chain 1, Maliss card trying to special summon, Branded Regained, effect to shuffle back that card, and then we'll be able to draw one card. So yeah, that's pretty nice, pretty efficient. You get a draw, and this is also like an interaction against specifically Maliss, and against I guess ryzeal, you're getting the draw. You might not be using the shuffle as an interaction necessarily, unless maybe you're playing SP or you have SP on the field. So it'd be like SP effect, banish itself plus duo drive, shuffle back. Well, in this case, you can't shuffle back duo drive because it's a fire, but you know, that's the basic idea. That's the gist of things right there. Aside from that, I guess you do have access to back row removal if we are going first as well, which is not bad, honestly. So we have Branded Beast, ability to pop both field spells, which is just useful in general, actually. Speaking of which, even this card is kind of useful. We have Vados, the Eruption Dragon of Extinction. So against Cross, you can just use this to pop Cross, which is like alright. And then we can also pop Maliss and Underground with Vados, which is just moderately useful, I guess. And it's not like a particularly useful body for either of those decks, so you're kind of chilling in those regards. Doesn't this full board wipe though? Yeah, not just your opponent's cards, yours as well. But yeah. I believe we might be able to even potentially block up some zones to make things more difficult. Well, I don't know if we can really do that against Maliss per se, but yeah. Bystials are surprisingly just still effective. and still useful in general. Just, yeah, they're moderately fine. And while we're at it, I believe Bystials should hit more decks than Lancia does. So it's just probably more efficient to run Bystials in the context of like Master Duel, where there's no side deck. So if you're just main decking Lancia, you can just suffer a lot. So here's one deck where, for the most part, I don't think Lancia is that great. So we have like Unicorn, start Unicorn effect, grabbing Theosis. If you Lancia at this point, I'm not bashing anything, you know? I just can't rip from your like extra deck with Unicorn this turn, I guess. Fenrir, special. If I grab ryzeal here, I can't special summon this. Well, I mean, I can special summon this, I just can't do anything with it because I can't banish any cards. With Tear Cash, I can't special summon this either because I can't banish Theosis in the graveyard. But yeah, it's still a follow-up play for next turn potentially, and you're still staring down Unicorn Fenrir, which I would argue is not a very ideal situation. So yeah, there's that. There's also the fact that if you don't know the ruling for Tear Cash and Kashtira Theosis, the order is actually special summon, banish, then mill. As you can see right here, special summon, and if you do, banish, and then send in new chain. So if chain 1 Kashtira, or if we do chain 1 Tear Cash, chain 2 Lancia, you'll just special summon Tear Cash and not banish the card in the graveyard. Yeah. And also, yeah, ryzeal banishes for cost. So technically, if you chain this to ryzeal effect, it just doesn't become level 7. You'll still at least get the target card you wanted banished. So that's something. Actually, let's check the order. If you banish any, this card's level becomes 7. Yeah, it won't banish your opponent's cards, only your own, because it's cost. And then, because of chain order, it only banishes the 1 card for cost. And it won't banish the 3 off the top. So, yeah, that's a thing. And then there's also, like, Chaos Hunter, which is terrible, into, like, cash, surprisingly enough. In fact, like, I think, is Flu fine as well, actually? No. I think Flu gets railed by Lancia, actually. But, yeah. For the most part, Bystials are pretty damn effective, and if they are not effective, you can still use them as potentially extenders and big guys to annoy your opponent with. Just kind of harassment even. So the idea would be like, stop lethal. Assuming your plays don't fully go through, we can just summon Bystials and try to play with Bystials and potentially board break with Bystials, or we can just have Bystials to prevent our opponent from being able to lethal us. And then there's also the idea of just using the Bystials turn 1 to get more Bystials, more advantage, and still have them usable as hand traps, or just additional bodies to do things with. Like, if we send Drewsworm with some effects, that's removal. Baldrake is actually also kind of generic, kind of removal as well. So, Bystials are just good as it happens right now. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.